It was Halloween night, and Amelia's neighborhood was buzzing with laughter and footsteps. Costumed children ran up and down the street, parents trailed behind, and the air was thick with the scent of fallen leaves and candle-lit pumpkins. She'd decorated her home, draping faux spider webs over the bushes and carving a pumpkin that glared menacingly from the porch. Every time the doorbell rang, she'd open the door to a chorus of trick-or-treat, from kids in costumes all eager for candy. But by 9 o'clock, the streets were starting to empty, and Amelia sighed, relieved. Her bowl of candy was nearly empty, and the last child had probably come and gone. She turned off the porch light, a universal signal in the neighborhood that there was no more candy to be had here. She tossed the last wrapper of her own treat into the trash, deciding to unwind with a Halloween movie before heading to bed. That's when the doorbell rang again. Amelia glanced at the clock and frowned. Who could it be at this hour? She hesitated, looking at the closed door. Part of her wanted to ignore it, but as she started to turn away, the bell rang again, longer this time. Whoever it was didn't seem to be giving up. She sighed and walked back to the door, flicking the porch light back on before unlocking it and pulling it open. Standing on her porch was a man dressed head to toe in an old-fashioned black suit. He was tall, almost unnaturally so, with hair as dark as night slicked back from his face. His skin was pale, so pale it seemed to glow faintly in the porch light, and his eyes were dark, fixed on her with an unsettling intensity. For a moment, Amelia wondered if he was just in costume, but something about him didn't feel right. Maybe it was the way he stood, perfectly still, or the sharpness of his features, almost too angular to be real. She shivered, but tried to keep her voice steady. "I'm sorry, we're all out of candy," she said, forcing a polite smile. The man's lips twitched, almost as if he found this amusing. "Oh, I am not here for candy." His voice was smooth, low, with an accent she couldn't place. "I was hoping for a different kind of hospitality." She was struck by his strange, formal phrasing. Something about his tone made her uneasy. She glanced over his shoulder, hoping for a sign of neighbors or a late trick-or-treater to break the tension, but the street was deserted. It was just her and this stranger. "Look, it's late," she said, gripping the doorknob a little tighter. "I think you should go." The man tilted his head, his eyes gleaming. "Are you frightened?" he asked softly. Amelia felt a cold prickle of fear inching up her spine. I think you should leave," she said again, more firmly this time, starting to close the door. His hand shot out, gripping the doorframe with surprising strength. "Please don't," he whispered, his voice so low she almost thought she imagined it. "Won't you invite me in?" Amelia's mind spun. Who was he? What was he doing here? Her instinct screamed at her to close the door and lock it, but she felt frozen in place, as if his eyes held some strange power over her. "Why should I let you in?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Because I am so very, very thirsty." His lips parted, and for the first time she noticed how sharp his teeth looked, particularly his canines, which gleamed, white and impossibly sharp in the light. She stepped back, her pulse pounding as the realization hit her. No, it couldn't be. It was impossible, ridiculous, but the way he was looking at her, with that hunger, that ancient hunger. "No," she murmured, shaking her head, snapping out of her trance. She shoved the door closed with all her strength, locking it, her heart racing in terror. For a moment she thought she was safe, but then she heard a sound, a soft scratching at the door, almost like nails raking down the wood. "Amelia," his voice purred from the other side. "I'll be waiting. And you'll come to me. Sooner or later, you will invite me in." She stumbled back from the door, feeling the air grow thick, suffocating. His words echoed in her mind as she backed into her living room, clutching her phone, heart hammering. The scratching continued, relentless, patient, like he had all the time in the world. And outside, in the darkness, the vampire waited.